Understanding your niche, your audience, who you could or should be speaking to, is crucial for a variety of reasons, least of which might be, marketing and messaging, which we're going to talk about here. But maybe beyond that, it's about feeling grounded and confident in what it is that you could or should be speaking about. In this video, I'm going to give you my formula that I've used as a coach, that I use for my clients to help me gain that foundation, that clarity in my messaging. Okay? Because when it comes to promoting ourselves, okay, I often talk about finding a strong acquisition model, meaning how we are acquiring attention and leads and whatnot. Speaking about our craft, speaking about our specialty and our expertise in a confident way is crucial to communicate that safety, so people might get curious. They might say, hey, maybe this is for me. All right, so in this video, I really want to help you refine your understanding of your niche and your audience so you can start connecting with more people. All right, first things first, I don't want to give a lot of fluff before we get into the meat and potatoes, but I do need to clarify 3 points before we actually move forward. Point number 1, when it comes to your niche, okay, you don't have to be married to this thing forever, okay? I want you to have your identity, your relatability. I want you to be able to bring in your own values, if you will, that are beyond maybe your specific expertise, okay? I will get into that further as we're going along, but just understand as you're processing this on an emotional level, it's not something we're like, oh, this is my thing forever. Everything in business is a test. Everything in business is a test, okay? Which brings me to point number 2. Nothing happens overnight, okay? What I'm talking about right now is it's a piece of the business puzzle, but really there's no safety in growth. There's no safety in comfort, if you will. If you want to grow, or if you're not growing, you have to learn how to take risks. And maybe most specifically, at what I mean behind that is you have to be able to test. You have to be comfortable testing. And again, nothing happens. Success doesn't always happen overnight. Yes, you might have a viral post, here and there, but as far as our ability to monetize that and actually make money from it, that remains to be seen. Just understand that this is a part of the business foundation. And point number 3, understand that your niche, or just understanding your audience, is a fundamental point of marketing and messaging. And that's exactly the context in which I'm going to be talking about this, because the more clarity you have on who it is that you could or should be serving, the more confident you can speak about certain content topics. Okay, you want to be able to communicate with somebody and for them to be able to feel this is for me. You want them to think that, right? Like feel and think. And I know at this point I might be a little redundant, but understand this is how we really start to leverage our clarity around our niche. It's about using it in our messaging and our marketing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that most people lack clarity around is their market, what market they're in. Now, this comes down to, broadly speaking, and from a money-based standpoint, okay, it comes down to 3 categories: health, wealth, and relationships. Okay, yes, there are more markets that you could get into, right? It could be, I guess, entertainment or food, if you will, but I am primarily somebody that works in the coaching space. I was a health coach for almost 20 years before I really stopped taking on clients. And with that being said, this is the coaching space, and this is not just limited to health coaching, but in the coaching space, these are the markets that people are actually investing money to get you to, as some people like to tout or boast, that 6-figure mark. Okay, I don't know why this is the mark that people aim for or shoot for. I think this is just kind of a figure that people are conditioned to believe into or aspire to. Me personally, I prefer predictability in my business over a numerical value, because if I have predictability, then and when I say predictability, I mean around the metrics and where my numbers are coming from, so that way I know where I can put more attention and energy into, and that way I am always in control of my own wealth. But that's a whole other rabbit hole. So when it comes to your market, health, wealth, and relationships, right off the bat, as I say this, okay, you might feel like you're in several of these categories. Maybe you are doing health and relationships, or wealth and health, and You very well could be, but as you see, as I go further into this formula, if you will, you'll start to understand. I am speaking too broadly to too many people, and as the saying goes, if you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. Okay, so what my goal is with this formula, or with this presentation, if you will, is to help you find that area, that space that you can really own, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. Okay. So again, right off the bat, health, wealth, relationships. Some people don't have clarity around this. Some people are like, yes, I am definitely in the health space, and that's great. Now where we go, okay, this is the first part of the formula. There are 3 parts actually, okay? The first is understanding your market. The second is understanding your sub-market. What? Okay, sub-market refers to the literal like sub-market. I know I said that sounds redundant, but it's the market within the market. It's the category within the broader space that you could or would be operating. And I say that because, you know, I said I was a health coach. I was actually a prehabilitative movement therapist. Okay? That's not the title that I went by, but understand that I was very much in the pain management space. If I describe myself as a health coach, that could mean a variety of things. It could be emotional health, could be spiritual health. They're all different kinds of health, right? So to call yourself a health coach, that doesn't communicate a distinct sense of confidence to somebody, because they're like, well, it's not that they're thinking, oh, I don't know what kind of health he is. It's that they're not thinking, oh, this is specifically for me. Okay? If I talk about pain management, immediately someone goes to, oh, I have pain in my lower back, or I have pain in my shoulder. They know that the next thing that comes out of my mouth might be for them. Yeah, so that's essentially what I mean. Now, I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm actually going to get into the most, I guess I would say the most researched sub-markets, so that way you have a little bit more clarity around this. There are other sub-markets that you can get into. This is more than just a starter pack, if you will, but I would say it's probably the top 12 per se. Again, you can get more creative with this, and I can do, you know, live exercises to get into this further, and I have other resources for that. But I want to give you what I consider to be the top 10 or 12, so that way you have a little bit more peace of mind. All right, so let's get right into the sub-markets of health. Okay, here they are: emotional health, ideal body weight, life coaching, spiritual health, physical movement, good habits, healthy lifestyle, chronic illness, living well, leisure time, time freedom, and healthy sleep. As I was listing off each one of those, could you start to feel a little bit of the specialization, the niching, if you will? We're not there yet. The niching, if you will, to each one of those, right? I can be a specialist with somebody that teaches you how to have healthy sleep. All of my messaging can be oriented around how to give someone a better night's sleep. I'm still in the health market. That's the overall goal. But I can be talking about everything regarding sleep. And somebody that's having sleep-oriented issues, they know that I'm probably the person that they could or should be going to. Okay? And I could say that with all of those. And really, you can hop on, you know, Instagram, YouTube, and just different platforms, and start to see like trends with this, right? Like somebody speaking about something that they're an expert in, and I'm putting that in quotations because you know, you'll see why in the third part of the formula. But that's what I'm really talking about here, is being able to take these subtopics and speak about them. Which you might have one of those that resonated with you right now, and like, oh no, this is the thing that I do, right? As you look at that list, maybe you might see, oh, I actually am speaking about a couple different things. Now, that begs the question, can you speak about more than one? I think you can. I think there's probably some overlap with those. But for example, I think that it just depends on the context and the presentation. I don't necessarily think that somebody can be speaking about like spiritual health and healthy sleep. I mean, maybe you can tie those two together, but I feel like they're pretty far apart. Similarly, or maybe I should say conversely, you know, I feel like there might be some overlap with emotional health and spiritual health. Maybe, okay? Depends on how granular you feel like you should be. And again, this is going to come up in the third part of the formula. All right. Now I want to actually give you the sub-markets for the other categories. The sub-market of wealth, okay? Building a business, spending less, saving more, two distinct sub-markets there. Working less, big one. Side hustle, huge one. Okay, retiring early, debt free, passive income, career development, minimalism, and time freedom. Once again, you saw time freedom also in the health category as well. So again, those are your submarkets of wealth. And like, if you, again, hopefully you're making some connections with this where like maybe there's some overlap, some stuff you're thinking about. I work primarily like in the wealth submarket. That's very like B2B. You are helping other people. I shouldn't say it's very B2B, but it can be very B2B, where you're helping other businesses make more money. But when you consider things like becoming debt free, spending less, or saving more, like those are obviously very B2C consumer markets. But you're talking to someone specifically about these things. And as I was saying a little bit ago, with regard to speaking about more than one, I think that there's probably some overlap there. Like spending less and saving more, I feel like you can talk about those with some overlap. But again, maybe the more hacks that you can give around spending less, the more structure you can give around that, right? The more you're speaking to somebody, the more they might know that, oh, I have a spending problem, right? Or maybe somebody wants to save more for investment type reasons. Hey, there's a distinction there. But again, the idea here is not to overlap too much. All right, let's go get into relationships. All right, relationships are parenting. All right, that's a big one for me, being a dad. Leadership skills, happy marriage, friendships, work management. And that's really oriented around like managing employees. Communication, effective communication, just how we communicate with each other, right? Interpersonal communication. Dating advice, psychology of love, infidelity, sexual pleasure, sexual orientation, and breakups. So again, I don't think that I have to repeat myself, for the sake of being redundant, but we are, for those of you that are in the relationship space and you're wondering, hey, how can I grow a little bit more? Maybe one of those submarkets is resonating with you a little bit more. You know that this is your specialization, this is your specialty, right? So up until right now, right? You might have found that even at a market level, you're too broad. Like, oh, I'm speaking to too many people. At a sub-market level, your content might be too broad. I'm skipping around too much. And again, this probably goes back to my second preliminary point at the beginning of this when I said like nothing happens overnight. If you are promoting yourself on social media, things do take time to really, I guess I would say, take root. And that just comes from a social media algorithm standpoint, because really what it comes down to is that it takes time for the social media algorithm to know which, you could think of it like this, which submarket you're in. And when they know that it will pump it out to more people. But if you're skipping around to all these different things and you're talking about all these different things, it has no idea where to pump your stuff out to, right? And then there's the whole other conversation around like how to do that creatively in a concise amount of time. I recently heard Alex Hormozi say it's not about delivering value, it's about delivering value per second. I thought that was a great way to look at things, but I digress. All right, now these are the first two parts of our formula. Know your market, know your submarket. Now let's get into the third one, maybe the most crucial. Okay, so part 3 of this niching formula, I might even say step 3, although it could come first. Okay, this is called the authority matrix. Now this has to do with understanding your own authority. It has to do with understanding where you hold the most clout and credibility with people. Okay? And it's crazy because I actually learned this maybe, 10 years ago, and it still applies in my business, in my client's business, in other industries. It's cross industry. Okay, so as I get into this, there are essentially 3 pillars, if you will, of the authority matrix. But as I get into this, also understand that this isn't just a one of the 3. As I start to speak about them, you could be in one bucket, or you could be under one pillar, you could be under 2, you could be in all 3. Sometimes I call that the trifecta, and maybe you can find that for yourself. All right, so pillar number 1 has to do with your education. Okay, your education. This has to do with your, I guess I would say your formal degrees or your certifications, if you will. And this is maybe for somebody that, and I don't want to generalize too much here because, gosh, there are just so many variables, but just as a general example, maybe this is somebody that just got out of a certification training or out of school, and you just don't have a lot of practical experience yet. That's okay. Okay? What I'm getting at here is that while you are promoting yourself or your specialty, you are leaning into your own education. So rather than trying to, I don't want to necessarily say like fake it till you make it, but rather than trying to feign, some of these other pillars I'm going to get into, you're actually really leaning on the credentials that you have and the training that you've gone into. You don't have to worry necessarily about being an innovator or being too creative just yet. You're leaning into your training. All right, so that's the first pillar of the authority. And when I say first, I don't mean like it's the highest or it comes the first. It's one of the pillars. Okay. The second pillar has to do with your experience. Now, this is a big one for a lot of people, right? Because you've been doing something for a long period of time, and maybe for certain industries, you might not have the formal degree, if you will, the formal certification or training, and there are people that value these things in different areas, right? Some businesses or brands or clients, they value that certification or degree, but other people, they might value the experience, how long you've been doing something. And each of those have their own pros and cons, right? An example here would be like, hey, somebody can have because they have so much experience, they are somewhat of an expert in their own right. They have a lot of understanding of experience. So that's what it means to understand something, to stand underneath it, to hold it up, right? So you have some of that practical knowledge, okay? Similarly, maybe you've been doing something wrong for a long period of time, and maybe you needed a certification or a degree or something to get a little bit more specific to maybe understand your blind spots a little bit more. I'm not sure. I'm just generalizing. Again, pros and cons. I don't want one of these to sound better than the other, okay? Because they're all just different. Now, the third area has to do with your passion or your interest. Okay, that's the third pillar. Your passion or your interest in doing something. This still goes a long way with people. Okay, for individuals that are developing a new interest in their life or starting a new career path, right? You're really passionate about it, and to kind of piggyback onto pillar number 2 about your experience, maybe that comes from your own experience doing something, like overcoming something. I should have said that for pillar number 2, but this is kind of a segue into it. You're passionate about something because you have overcame something, right? And that goes a long way with a lot of I don't want to say like consumers or leads, but people, right? Like if I'm going to seek out somebody for a problem that I have, I feel more confident in knowing that they have overcome a similar solution. Doesn't necessarily have to be the case, right? If I need a surgery or I have some sort of like a legal question, I want somebody with a degree in that particular area, right? So again, pros and cons. Now, just to kind of give you some examples here, I just gave you one. You can have experience and your passion. You can have education and your passion, right? Maybe not a lot of experience yet, but maybe you're really enthusiastic about something. Maybe you understand things at I'm going to say a level of theory. Okay? And when I say theory, I don't mean to be untrue. I mean that in the sense of you know a lot of stuff on paper. You just need a chance to apply it, in which case your marketing will be a little bit different. Okay. Now let's bring this formula full circle here. How do we combine all of this? Going back to my third point around messaging, this is how we are putting our best foot forward. Okay, how we are stepping onto the stage. I am understanding which market I'm in. I am understanding which sub-market I am in, what I could or should be speaking to, and I'm leaning on my authority. Okay, and understanding your authority is not even important from a messaging standpoint, but it's also helpful for giving you that voice, giving you that confidence. A lot of people might refer to that lack of confidence as imposter syndrome. Okay, sometimes I say imposter syndrome can be a good thing because you're challenging yourself, but nonetheless, we do want to move forward. We do want to put ourselves out there. Okay? Whether or not your acquisition model is social media or strategic relationships, actually like meeting people in person, maybe it's email, right? You need to be able to speak about these things so that way people know that you are about this particular thing. And when it comes to your niche, you're generally working with a general type of person or a specific problem. Okay? And as you combine all three of these, you understand, okay, my sub-market, this is where I'm at, this is what I could or should be speaking to. These are the topics of content that I should be making, right? And then from there, you start to take a look at, well, where do I have the most credibility and clout? These are the things that I've overcome, and this is why. This is my why. Okay? My why about what I'm in, why I'm doing what I'm doing in my particular niche. Okay? And when it comes to the authority matrix, it's great if you can combine all three, okay? But you don't have to worry about that. Over time, maybe all three come. And I just say that because that tends to be what holds like the most clout with individuals. But that, experience can go a long way. Any of those three, or combination can go a long way. But ultimately, you want to be able to arrive at this statement, this internal compass, if you will, of I do this for this type of person. I solve this kind of problem for this kind of individual, for this type of individual. And when I say this type of individual, I don't necessarily see it to say like, oh, just men or women. When it comes to your niche, you want to be more granular than that. You don't necessarily want to say like, oh, I help men with back pain, or I help men with something like let's go back to our submarkets. I help men spend less. Okay, what kind of a man, what kind of a woman? Again, you don't have to make a distinction here. Even something like, an age range. The more granular you're getting, the closer you are, I suppose. Like you could say, I help men in their 40s. I help women in their 40s. I help men in their 30s. I mean, there's some other variables here with regard to like where people hang out on like platforms and whatnot. But it's like, what do you do specifically? There's your submarket. What submarket in and what do you do in that submarket? Okay? Who is your type of individual? Are they entrepreneurs? Are they doctors? Are they finance specialists? Okay? Well, when it comes to answering that type, that's where I want you to go back to your authority matrix. Okay? And that's where we're tying everything together here. Market, submarket, authority matrix. So now that you have a little bit more clarity on your niche, your groundedness, your foundation, if you will, now we can start to get into our content marketing, using that information to go and find topics to put ourselves out there with. Again, maybe on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever that might be. But this is where it starts. And I have another video where you can actually get into that and start to take a look at your submarket, your niche, and what content you should be making within that submarket. Hope you found this video helpful. Okay? If you did, let me know. Comment, DM, whatever type of medium you might be watching this. Really helpful for me to know. And if you have any questions, I'm always here for that as well. My name is Jeremy Berumen. I'll see you on the next one.